Well, if you're an Oklahoma Sooner fan and you saw what Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong put out about Williams Nwaneri after his visit to Texas A&M, you might already be starting to have PTSD from, well, the past couple of years of having to deal with Texas A&M and defensive line recruiting. But guys, we're here to talk about it today. We're here to collect our thoughts because it sounds like Williams Nwaneri had a good time at Texas A&M. But guys, before we dive into it, go ahead and hit that like and hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you all are thinking down in the comments below. Ultimately, where do you guys think Williams Nwaneri ends up in the 2024 recruiting cycle? So, Williams Nwaneri, a guy who we believe has been trending to Oklahoma for quite a while now. I mean, when you talk to Brandon, you talk to Parker, you go listen to their live streams. If you're on any of their boards, you read their notes. It felt like Williams Nwaneri was potentially going to end up being a Sooner. Well, as this recruitment has drug out, it seems like it's starting to maybe trend in a different direction. Ultimately, it doesn't sound like he's going to be at the Champion Barbecue for the Sooners. I don't know if that's been confirmed yet, but a lot of rumors floating around out there about how it might be Tennessee. And you heard Steve Wiltfong, maybe it's like a month ago, say, hey, Tennessee could be the leader in the doghouse right now for Williams Nwaneri. And then you see him go to Texas A&M. And you start to read the notes that Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong put out on social media. And I look at the first one starting with Chad Simmons and specifically around the quote that was put up in the graphic. And he said, they are up there with Oklahoma and Tennessee, as he's referring to Texas A&M. At the top now, I got a good idea about Texas A&M, and I really liked it all. So the question is, what does at the top now mean? Does that mean Texas A&M is a leader? Does that just mean they're in a top 3 or top 4 or top 5? Ultimately, you've heard that relationships are going to be very important to Nwaneri, that those are going to be what drives Nwaneri to commit to wherever he commits. And Parker has a great relationship with him, so I'm going to trust that Parker knows what he's talking about when he talks to Nwaneri. But you hear some of the industry leaders and Chad Simmons and Steve Wiltfong put these reports out after they talk to Nwaneri, and you have to go, okay, is there smoke to this, or are they just trying to hype it up? Well, Steve Wiltfong got a chance to catch up with Nwaneri as well, and basically Nwaneri practically said they are a contender and how he liked his visit a lot, which is not really different from what Chad Simmons said, other than the fact that he said that he is going to be back, whether it's for their big event that they do, like their barbecue or their pool event, or it will be an OV. And here's why I say, if you're an Oklahoma fan, you really start to worry, because it was David Hicks the last cycle. It was Gabriel Brownlow Dindy back in 2022. It was Levius Overton in 2022. It's the prospects that you keep losing to Texas A&M for one thing or another. And I know a bunch of you guys will get into the comments and say, hey, well, it's the NIL bag. Texas A&M is dropping them. Well, here's my deal. If it was just the NIL bags, I don't feel like players would necessarily be going there, because if you're a 5-star defensive lineman, you're going to get an NIL deal wherever you go. But here's the deal. Texas A&M has a guy by the name of Elijah Rushing, who is doing an incredible job at developing defensive linemen out of Texas A&M. And he's done an incredible job at recruiting these guys there. I mean, you had DeMarvin Leal, you have Walter Nolan, David Hicks, Levius Overton, Gabriel Brownlow Dindy, which was he going to be a Sooner when Venables got there anyways? I don't know. But all I know is Elijah Robinson is doing a good job at developing these defensive linemen, and I think the players are starting to notice it. And when you see Texas A&M in a recruiting battle, it's kind of like an Ohio State and Larry Johnson type of deal. You know it's going to be a tough one to kind of beat him out. And yeah, you've got Todd Bates, and Todd Bates got Brian Breesy and KJ Henry and all those other guys. He developed them. He got some of those guys in that Clemson class. Todd Bates is great at the relationships. But ultimately, I think it's going to be hard when you're having to go up against Elijah Robinson. I don't know why I keep thinking of Elijah Rushing at the moment. I think it's because I just saw something about him earlier. But Williams Nwaneri taking his visit to Texas A&M. Obviously, it sounds like everything went well there. So you guys, if you watched my prediction video on my second prediction video on what I thought was going to happen for the Oklahoma Sooners class, I was a little bit more reserved this second time just because I don't feel like we can really count on Nwaneri anymore to be in this class. Where maybe at the beginning of the cycle, you thought this would wrap up by the summertime. Oklahoma would have the 5-star in their class. You wouldn't have to really worry about him flipping. But it sounds like this recruitment will be your typical 5-star recruitment. So now I'm looking at it and going, who can the Sooners potentially get? Who is still on the board? And I think we have to start looking outside of 5-star territory because it's just going to be that. Like you're going to have a hard time getting any of those top tier defensive linemen. You got the David Stones and the Edric Houstons and the Dominic McKinleys. So, yeah, I think we have to start looking at, okay, can Oklahoma close on Joseph Jonah-Ajonye and Nigel Smith? Those are two guys you have to close on because you're not going to be able to rely on the Nwaneri. If he commits, that's great. But you're going to have to get these guys. You can't miss out on the mid-tier interior defensive linemen this year. Additionally, I think Oklahoma is going to have to make a hard push for Jaden Jackson, a friend and a teammate of David Stone. I think that one's got to happen. If you can land those three and land one of the 5-stars, you look at Todd Bates and go, you had an exceptional defensive line recruiting class this year. Okay, maybe not exceptional, but you had a good defensive line recruiting class this year. No, I'm going to say exceptional because Joseph Jonah-Ajonye and Nigel Smith are pretty good talents. And if you get both of those guys and a David Stone or a Williams Nwaneri or an Edric Houston or Dominic McKinley, any one of those four of those guys, yeah, then you're doing really well because you landed a 5-star interior. And obviously, Miguel is going to do what he can do on the edge position, whether it's with Zena Yumi-Ozulu, Logan Thomas, Owen Waffle, any of those guys. But guys, I want to hear from you. Go ahead and jump down in the comments below. Give me your feelings about what is going on in this Williams Nwaneri recruitment. Do you think the Oklahoma Sooners are going to be able to close? And if not, where do you think Williams and Nwaneri actually ends up?